Alright, so Terraria is the 11th best-selling game of all time, and one of the highest rated games on Steam, so I'm just going to assume you're aware of it, and not go into detail about its gameplay. Despite its popularity, many people still struggle to get into it, which is mainly caused by the fact people think that the game doesn't tell you anything, which is partially true. The game does tell you basically everything you need to know, but the problem is that it's really easy to overlook, with some more issues with other features that can cause some extra headaches. So, if you want to get into Terraria, or a friend of yours sent you this video to get you into Terraria, welcome. I'm Apollyon, and in this video, I'll teach you how to start Terraria, so that you can see why everyone loves this game. Let's start with those who like to have minimal knowledge when starting a game. Here's all you need to know. This is an NPC called the Guide. Fucking talk to him. He spawns in with you at the start of the game and will, as his title implies, guide you through it. So many people just ignore him and then are upset that they don't know what they're supposed to do. Don't become a statistic. That's basically all you need to know if you prefer blind playthroughs, but if you want, there's also some setup that you'll have to do before playing. Don't worry, there'll be a warning before we move on to anything that could be a spoiler. Before you can start Terraria, you first have to make a character. Everything here is just vanity except for this. This is the character mode, which has 4 options. Do note that this isn't the game's difficulty. Classic is the initially chosen mode, which has you drop a portion of your held money on death. This mode is the quote-unquote intended one. Medium core is next, which has you drop your entire inventory when you die. So if you're new to Terraria, this might sound okay. You know, like that's in Minecraft, and it works there. And I wouldn't blame you for thinking that, but in Terraria, you're going to die a lot. And die even more if you don't know what to expect. So, I'd advise not starting on this. And honestly, I'd just advise not playing medium core in general. Hardcore, no respawning. So, everything I said about medium core, just take that and multiply it by 3. Journey is the last one. It's somewhat comparable to Minecraft's creative mode, giving the player some abilities that give control over the game, and changing how the game is played overall. I'd advise playing on Classic if you're new, but for those who want an easier or more relaxed experience, Journey is also a fair option. But do know that it can make you stronger at a rate the game isn't balanced around, even if you increase the difficulty. After making your character, you'll then need to make a world. You'll first have the name and world seed. Name is self-explanatory, and the seed is what dictates how the world generates. The first important thing is world size. This option is mostly preference, but has some lines with player count. If you're alone or playing with someone else, I'd say choose between small and medium. If you're with 2 or 3 people, medium or large, and with 4 or more, large. The next thing is difficulty, which has 4 options. The first is Journey, only accessible by characters in Journey mode, and vice versa. The world itself isn't changed. This is just so that Journey mode characters can't interact with normal ones. Then there's Classic. Like the character mode, this is the quote-unquote intended difficulty, and it isn't too hard. After that is Expert, which doubles the stats of most enemies and gives bosses new attacks and mechanics. But in turn, many enemies have higher item drop rates, drop more money, and all bosses drop a powerful exclusive item when killed. Last is Master, which increases enemy stats to 3 times classic modes, and furthers some more mechanics of expert mode. but it gives players an extra accessory slot that makes every boss drop special trophy items. If you're not playing on Journey mode, I'd advise playing on Classic. You can play on Expert, but it can be made a lot harder to get through without knowing what you're supposed to do, especially because you won't be aware of what gear you should use. But it's still an option for those who are fine with that. I would not advise Master, as it's balanced around you knowing what equipment is good. However, if you're playing in a large group, you may want to pick Expert mode anyways. Expert mode causes bosses' stats to scale in multiplayer. Without it, bosses might be too easy. All bosses will also give every player their own set of drops, which could massively reduce grinding. The last part of the world is the evil biome, being either the corruption or the crimson. Which evil you choose will usually come down to preference, because despite their differences, they fill the same role. Probably the most notable thing is that the crimson is a bit harder overall, while also offering some stronger loot, but I wouldn't really say the difference is big enough to matter. After making your choices, you select your character and world, and get into the game. Last thing before we get into any spoiler talk, let's go over the UI. By pressing the escape key, you can open your inventory. In the top left, you can see your entire inventory, held coins, and ammo. There's also a trash slot, an achievement display, automatic sorting buttons, a bestiary, and an emote menu. On the middle left, you can see your crafting menu. Everything you make appears here. There's also this hammer icon, which allows you to open an alternative menu that'll make it easier to see everything you can craft. On the right, at the top, you can see your health, mana, and minimap. Underneath, these three slots are your armor, a helmet, chestplate, and leggings, and these under it are accessory slots. These slots on the left are vanity. Placing something here will show it on your character. It won't give any effects, but will be shown over any equipped armor or accessory. At the bottom, there are settings. This menu has the save and exit button, which is how you'll exit the world. Additionally, there are these options here. I'd advise having smart doors and auto fire both on. Smart doors will let you automatically open doors by walking through them, and auto fire makes that all items can be repeatedly used by holding mouse 1. Lastly, the guide has a crafting option, which many new players think just opens the crafting menu. But by putting a crafting material in the slot, the guide will show you everything that the material is used in. This can be a massive help to learn the game, so remember to use it. Before we move on, here's the warning from earlier. If you don't want any spoilers, here's your stop. Like, comment, subscribe, all that, and head on out. Otherwise, we'll start with the general biomes you'll encounter throughout Terraria's world. We'll only be getting into minor spoilers. What I mean by that is general world generation, some biomes, their dangers, and a few pieces of equipment. Most of the biomes you'll come across will have two variants, a surface version and an underground version, each of which has unique resources and enemies. These underground biomes will be notably more dangerous than their surface counterparts, but will house much more powerful items. These underground variants aren't all the same though. For instance, there's the snow biome on the surface, and below it is the ice biome. When it comes to the surface, it is very similar to the forest that you spawn in, but the ice biome underground is a bit scarier than the normal caverns, and as said before, offers more powerful equipment. The world generally follows the same ideology. The further down you go, the more dangerous it becomes, but you'll find more valuable things. But even the furthest depths of the ice and underground are quite tame when compared to the underground desert and jungle. But, as you may expect, with the greater danger comes greater loot. So, perhaps it could be worth it to face the bigger threat head-on, or perhaps you'd rather get stronger gear before braving them. Such is your choice. But perhaps even more dangerous are the corruption and crimson. The enemies here are of similar strength to those of the underground jungle and desert, and the terrain is harsher, making a surface level area nearly as threatening as the most dangerous underground. But even worse, these biomes have a unique ability to grow and slowly corrupt nearby terrain. So, last notes for starting Terraria, having information we've already covered, and some that are too short to put anywhere else. Explore. A lot of things can be solved just by poking around the right area. Dying is a common occurrence. Don't be afraid of it. You can craft a hammer early in the game, which will allow you to destroy background walls and change block shapes. There are craftable blocks called platforms, which you can drop through by pressing down. You should talk to the town NPCs, more than just the guide, as their dialogue can hint you towards progression. You should talk to the guide more, as he has a lot more dialogue meant to lead you. Lastly, have an extra house or two in case more town NPCs are available. When playing, there will be some downtime and struggles. The main one I will mention is the point after beating the wall. A good number of people drop the game after this point, and I can't say I really blame them. It does kinda suck. For general advice, that's about what I would consider important. I'm still trying to avoid spoilers, so you can still have fun exploring. There's actually a lot that I didn't mention. For instance, here's something that generates in every world. I wonder what it is. So, if you're here to start Terraria, this is the end. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that, and go out there and have some fun. But surely this video shouldn't need to exist, right? Surely there's something that could be done to make the game easier to start. Well, I have some ideas, so here's my take on how to make this video obsolete. The number one problem with starting the game is missing the guide. This can be caused by a few things. I think the main one is initial adaptation. Basically, a new player needs to first adjust to the world they just spawned in. The tools they have, the way the character moves, and if a slime spawns in, how to fight. In this chaos, it's very easy to overlook the guide, which then leads to the player having no lead. The next big cause is if the guide dies, which is very commonly caused by the player not making housing. This creates the same problem with the player losing their lead, but unlike not noticing him, this one can't be fixed unless the player just happens to make a valid house, because they're supposed to be taught how to make one by the guide. These can both be fixed with two changes. One, make so that the guide can spawn without valid housing, and two, make it so that the guide doesn't spawn in on world generation. The guide respawning will prevent any problems caused by him dying, and if he naturally spawns a few minutes after the player spawns in, then it calls attention to him, either by the message in chat or his appearance. In addition to this, you can make it so that during the first few minutes of the game, there are reduced spawn rates around the world spawn, so that new players will be less likely to be interrupted by slime while trying to talk to the guide, to prevent them from getting distracted. Another problem is help dilution. The guide has so many tips that the player could have already read or aren't useful anymore, which makes it harder to find any advice you'd actually need. This could be fixed by overhauling the help menu to let players read any tips that they want. But this could also be overwhelming and new players might not want to interact with it. With not being overwhelming in mind, I think you could split his advice into two menus. One for general help and the other for important help, like a quest option. General advice would have things such as town NPC requirements and exploration tips. The quest option is for things such as making houses and boss dialogue, such as creating a suspicious looking eye, roaring in the snow, or gear suggestions. This would be to filter the advice so that the player would be more likely to see tips that are important, and make them more aware whether or not they're up to par on equipment. While on the topic of the guide, his crafting menu looks too similar to the normal crafting menu. The only differences are this box and this line of text. This can be fixed by just adding a shader to the box and text to make both of them more noticeable, or by adding a tip that tells you how to use it. Because of the importance of housing, and because the happiness option is very intriguing, I think the guide should have an alternate homeless quote that implores you to ask for help. Which should also make it so that if help is selected, he'll always go through the housing dialogue. This dialogue would only appear if neither the nurse nor the merchant is present and the guide is homeless. This is intended to instill the idea that you should ask the guide for help and push the player towards making a base before the first night. Other than the guide, to make important items more obvious, some early items could get descriptions that explain them. For instance, the wooden and metal hammers could all state a tool that can destroy background walls and reshape blocks. Wooden platforms would state can be dropped through by pressing down, and ropes would state can be climbed by pressing up or down. These descriptions are intended to make important items more noticeable, so new players will be able to know the purpose of these items and be more likely to use them. And I think that's it. I think that should be enough to get people over the initial hill of starting. And that quest suggestion could help players throughout the entire game. I think the most important thing for a new player is talking to the guide early. My main suggestion is to make him and his abilities clearer to new players, because in the early game, when players don't know what to do, he can and will be a decider in how much someone enjoys the game. That is all. Thank you for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Because if you're this far in the video, you're clearly interested. So, why not stick around the channel a while?